Picture this. You're in front of your latest prospect, closing the biggest deal of your life. Your pitch decks were perfect. Your scripts, flawless. And when the time came to answer the golden question of, are you ready to move forward? Nothing happened. For everyone who loves sales, this is their worst nightmare. But fear not, because in this podcast, we're unraveling the enigma behind those missed opportunities. From appointments that evaporate to presentations that felt like a Broadway show but ended in awkward silence, we're dissecting it all. Welcome to Love Your Sales.
This podcast is presented by Genhead. Genhead leverages AI so small and medium-sized businesses can find their ideal clients to make more sales. Other companies talk about AI, but we are using it every day to drive down marketing costs and increase revenue. Learn more at genhead.com. That's genhead.com.
Welcome to another episode of Love Your Sales. I am joined by Brian Maas. Brian specializes in empowering founders, presidents, and sales managers to build and scale high-performing sales teams with confidence, clarity, and intention. With over 26 years of expertise in sales and leadership, Brian has partnered with small to mid-sized businesses to implement a data-driven process to identify, interview, and onboard high-performing salespeople who will sell in your unique selling environment and equip business leaders with a scalable framework. His mission is help companies avoid bad sales hires and build strong, high-performing sales teams. Welcome, Brian. I am so excited to talk about this.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you do for the business community.
Well, so let's jump in because, first, why don't you tell us a little bit about, your business, what you do, how, we'll get into the how you do this, but just, kind of fill in some of the blanks.
Yeah. So when I decided to go on my own and start my own business, I wanted to help sales organizations just be more effective in how they grow sales and how they grow. And one of the things I was realizing was that one of the most costly mistakes that sales organizations make, of course, is bad sales hiring. And through all the years that I've done sales hiring, I've just learned some of the do's and don'ts around it. I've learned which tools and processes to use. And so I'm helping companies put those same processes and best practices into place so that they can avoid, of course, the high cost of sales turnover. So that's what I do today.
So we've all, I think anybody who's been in business or been working out in the world for as long as, I have, I'll speak for myself. I won't date you. I think we've all experienced that sitting next to somebody who you're like, how is this guy still or gal still working at this company, in the sales capacity? It's like, why haven't they gotten fired, or how did they even get hired? So I'm intrigued, how, and salespeople are notoriously great at being able to speak a great game. My dad always used to say, like, well, you can go and get any job you want because you're really good at selling yourself.
Right.
So let's talk about that. How, how do you help businesses with this?
Well, I think this is twofold. You touched on it really well in that salespeople are really good at selling themselves. I think sometimes they tend to think they're better than they really are. They're going after maybe positions that they aspire to be in. And yet you've got sales hiring managers who many of them just don't have a whole lot of experience in how to deal with those types of situations. They don't have a whole lot of experience in hiring salespeople. Salespeople are so much different to hire than anybody else in your business, right? I mean, they are the face of your business. They're the ones carrying your brand, your messaging, how they differentiate themselves. And there's just so many founders, for example, who are getting out of founder-led sales, and they need to hire somebody to kind of take over, and they don't know what to look for in a sales hire. You've got presidents who maybe have got two or three salespeople under them who have just, they heard from somebody, hey, this person sells really well, and so they just brought them on board. And just because they sold well in another company or environment doesn't mean they're going to sell well in your environment. And so there's all kinds of things that you can do to make sure that that salesperson is going to sell in your environment, and get around this whole notion that the salesperson can sell anything, because that's just not true. There's so many different factors involved, so many different core competencies in selling. And a lot of companies just don't step back and say, oh, look, if we're going to grow our sales, they've got to understand what the criteria for that role looks like and make sure that they've got a plan in place for the type of person that they need in that role. So a lot of it is just understanding how to avoid that gap between the salesperson, thinking they're going above and beyond what they can sell, and the hiring manager looking for those things that are going to, fit well in their business for this salesperson.
Absolutely. And the other, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, what about the kind of sale?
Yeah.
There's and I'm sitting here thinking about like the sales jobs that I've had. There's that instantaneous sale where somebody is walking into a store. And
Yeah.
I cut my teeth at a Sam's Club, where I was one of the little booths that would pop up, and they're introducing new products, so that you've got, a little booth that people walk in and you're like, hey, try this. It's brand new, and
Right.
cleaning product or makeup
Yeah.
or new knives or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's people who are going to Sam's Club are looking, they're going to spend money. They typically, when they walk into a Sam's Club or they walk into a Costco or one of the big box stores,
Right.
they're looking to drop at least 100, 2, 3. I mean, people go in there and drop thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's easy for you to really quickly go, hey, here's a really awesome new set of knives, only $49.99. And people are like, oh, okay. And sometimes people will be like, oh, I'll buy 3 of them. That's a really good deal. It's like, it's an
Yeah.
instantaneous, instant gratification kind of sale. Then you've
Yeah.
got okay, this is a 3, 4, 6 week sales cycle. Then you've got
Yeah.
this is a 6 month, year long. Then you've
Yeah.
got the enterprise like mass sales, where you
Yeah.
get in there and it's a year long, sometimes 2 year long sales cycle to break into these
Yeah.
massive companies. Those are completely different mindset and discipline. You're
Yeah.
whining and dining these people. You are,
Yeah.
I mean, so to try to hire somebody who's been in enterprise sales to sell that instantaneous,
Yeah.
that may work, but to try to hire
Right.
somebody who does the instantaneous sale to the enterprise sale.
Yeah. Yeah, you've heard about the hunter versus the farmer, and then you've got someone who's just going to take inbound leads from marketing and work those. You've got someone who's going to maybe go out and find new contacts or logos and then hand that off to an account manager. Yeah, there's the length of your sales cycle, the size of the sale that you're dealing with, all of those things factor into what are the competencies that you need from that salesperson to be able to do really well at that. How well are they at relationship building? How well are they at actually reaching decision makers, getting commitment from the buyer? There's selling competencies that fall into one of 3 categories. There's this will to sell, which is how committed are they? How motivated are they? Do they have the desire? Do they have the right outlook? There's all kinds of things around sales DNA you've probably heard, like what are the self-limiting beliefs that keep us from selling? What are those things that get in the way? And then you've got all the tactical pieces of those sales competencies, getting to the decision maker and asking the right questions. How well can they ask consultative questions? How well can they, in those complex sales, be able to make sure they've got the attention or understand the needs of all the different stakeholders who are involved in that buying process. So yeah, it goes, I mean, it's like a spider web. You've got to make sure you understand exactly what the role is going to need
Right.
before you can even go out and hire somebody. And I think that's a big gap where a lot of hiring managers miss, is they don't understand exactly what they're looking for. So when it comes time to ask that salesperson to come and say, hey, how will you do at selling our product or service? The salesperson's going to go, oh yeah, I can do that. Right.
Right.
They're just
Well, I can sell anything. I'm
right.
great. But
Yeah.
I've also seen some of the most experienced salespeople who are used to selling to an owner walk into a room where all of a sudden they've got 7 people sitting at the table and they freeze.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wait, I,
I didn't
uh,
expect that.
and it's like, okay, so you've never given a presentation to
Right.
a boardroom?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
that's also really intimidating to, especially when you have somebody, one or two, and this has happened to me, where you've got 5 people at the table and then the 2 people in the back with their arms crossed just staring,
Right.
who are half falling asleep or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
why are they in
Yeah.
here? um and that, again, that's another competency where you don't think about it. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, we're going to be selling this. Have you sold to a group? Have
Yeah.
you presented to a large group? And that in
Yeah.
itself can be intimidating.
Yes. Very much so. And, I find too that there's a lot of salespeople out there that they haven't had a formal sales training on just how to sell, the methodology, the tactical, what happens in that dialogue with a buyer. Some do really, really well at, engaging and asking the right questions, but unfortunately, a lot of salespeople start out with that prospect and say, "Well, let me tell you how great our product is. And let me open up my PowerPoint presentation and start, telling you, why you need what we're selling." It's just
Right.
you've got to flip the script on that, obviously, right? So, part of that interviewing process has got to be doing an audition in a way, turning that interview into an audition and setting that salesperson up so that they have to kind of prove to you that they've got the experience or the skills or the tactical expertise around how to engage that prospect in the right conversation too. And you touched on something else about, if you don't know what your average sales size is or how long your sales cycle is or the personas of the people who you're going after, that's a really important part of the sales hiring manager knowing what that salesperson needs to be engaged with. So, how difficult is the sale? Are they going to work the whole length of the sale themselves, or are they going to have a sales engineer or some subject matter expert coming into the sales process at some point in time? So there's a lot of factors that have to be thought through before you can even determine, what, going out and finding that salesperson and start the interviewing process.
So this you it just triggered an interesting story, Brian, in my head. So, and this was a battle. I was a young salesperson. This is years ago. I was in my first real sales role. I was rocking it. I was doing really well, and there was a whole new loop thrown in, or a whole new, I should say, not loop, the whole new challenge, I guess, thrown
Yeah.
in at me when a new manager had come in, and she had recommended that a new person start doing demos. And this person, while be it was really good at their job, did not know how to present in front of people, did not know the difference between training and demoing. And I remember the first time she's like, yeah, take her out. She's going to do the demo. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's fine. That'll take some of the stress off of me of having to set up the demo and everything else. And this was on a software that I was not part of. I was specialized in the time and attendance. This was on the actual payroll side that connected to it. And when she started doing this demo, it went into like, here's where you enter in the name. Here's where you enter in the email. Here's where, and I'm like, what are we doing a demo, or are we doing like a training session?
Right. Right.
And it got to the point where it was painful for me. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want to blow my own head off. Like, this is horrible. And
Right.
it tanked the sale.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my manager and I'm like, I can't take this person on a sales, like on a demo anymore. And they're like, why? And basically they told me that I was being mean, and that like,
Yeah.
you can't say that about another employee. And I'm like, no. Like, this is what happened. Like, I'm not trying to be inappropriate. And I got reprimanded for it. And it was
Wow.
like, wait, but no, you don't, like, no, maybe I'm not saying it right because I'm new to this, new to sales and stuff, but like, and so that's another aspect of it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be hyper aware of the people in the room and their reactions.
Yeah.
Like, if you see people starting to, here's a perfect sign. If somebody has got one of their notebooks that, that one of the ones that open,
Yeah.
and all of the sudden they close it and they lean back from the table,
That's a sign.
they're they're ready to be done with the meeting.
Right. Right.
You just lost them somewhere.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, body language speaks volumes. Like, you're probably
Yeah.
not going to get them back.
Yeah.
Sorry, and we went off on a tangent. I want to go back to the hiring portion of this, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
triggered that story in my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember. So trying to take somebody, out of their role and make them a salesperson,
Yeah.
that is a dangerous thing as well. And I've seen that happen at companies where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, but she's really great at training and stuff. Why don't we have her do this?
Yeah.
Be careful with that too.
Yeah.
Because
But you touched on something though too, because that's a good part of the interviewing process for salespeople is identifying those things. You find the salespeople who are way too wordy and they keep talking and talking and talking. And then you find the ones that are they're too succinct in their answers. And little things like that. It's the visual cues and things that you want to look for, because in the interview process, it doesn't get any better than the face-to-face interview. If you're seeing things that are a red flag, you've got to be able to call that out, or at least dock them for that. And it's not mean either. That's just being very objective.
Right. And again, this was a very, very, very
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
And I think, now, and I was also young,
Yeah.
people, I think, oh, she's just young and she doesn't know what she's talking. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
now I'm a little older and I still remember that. But yeah. And that's when you are interviewing a salesperson, it's important that you are seeing them face to face, seeing their
Yeah.
body language, seeing their,
Yeah.
everybody's heard of the resting bee face.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, is that a salesperson they have to be engaged.
Yeah.
And if that person doesn't look engaged, or is constantly looking at their cell phone, or is not,
Right.
and I've had that. I've had where I had a sales call today on my cell phone. And I said, hello. And he asked me a couple of questions. And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. And he goes, I'm sorry, can you hold, please? I can't,
You called me.
you called me. Like,
That's great.
I'm like, click, I hung up. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
people today are so oblivious to the level of their importance to other people,
Yes. Yes.
that the audacity that he would call me and then say, can you hold, please?
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
cannot. No, people, salespeople think sometimes, because a lot of salespeople have egos. I mean,
No.
gee, I'm sorry, guys, girls and gals
Yeah.
out there who are in
It's
sales.
so true.
we do have a tendency to sometimes have egos. Um, we do sometimes have to be told, like, hey, y- you're not, you're not what everybody, like, people don't necessarily, they're not flocking to you.
Right.
You're the least important person in that other person's world right now.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to become important is if you make them the most important person in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People do business with people who they like, and people do business with people who are like themselves. So a lot of this comes down to how well do you bond and build rapport and find commonality, and those are things even to look for in the hiring world too. When you're first meeting somebody. So yeah, that's really important.
So let me ask you, Brian, where do you start to find these people? Where, I mean, is there like a best practice place to even begin? Because there's so much noise and so many rabbit holes you could go down on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, the first reaction for everybody is, post an ad on LinkedIn or Indeed or one of those, websites, and those are great. They're okay. LinkedIn's probably one of the best, but try to think outside the box. Where are the salespeople that you want to hire hanging out? Because you're not just looking for the people who are proactively looking on LinkedIn because they're out of a job, right? There's plenty of people out there who are passively looking for their next big role. Where are they hanging out? Is it at the golf club? Is it at an association that you belong to? It can be any number of places. It just kind of depends on your business and your industry and where you're at. But just getting creative and thinking outside the box a little bit about where some of the people that you're looking for might be hanging out, and getting referrals. Sometimes you've got to go source them yourself. You've got to be more proactive to do a search on LinkedIn of people who are maybe in your industry or have the role that's similar to yours. But yeah, I think a lot of it is being able to, read a good resume too when you've got an ad that's on LinkedIn or Indeed. You get tons of resumes in, and a lot of people don't know how to read a resume between the lines. I've never seen a bad sales resume, right? They
No,
all look stellar. you know
right.
so what are you looking for on that resume? So there's a lot of things to be thinking about. But to answer your question, just trying to get creative and think about where those salespeople are hanging out that you wouldn't have otherwise found, for
Yeah.
sure.
Again, it comes down to salespeople are brilliant at selling themselves, not only in person, but also on paper, because they know exactly what to say and what to do in order to get hired. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they are necessarily the right person for the criteria, which means I'm going to guess that you're going to also be you when a job description is written, is there anything that you would recommend for those people hiring?
Yes, because if you look at most job postings today, they're all the same. They talk about the company, they talk about the roles and responsibilities, they got the benefits. They don't excite a salesperson, right? So writing that job description or that job posting should have words in there like you get excited about calling on new prospects, or you get jazzed or energized by, solving problems for clients. And that ad should cover all the things that we've talked about in the role criteria that they're going to be doing. you know you're motivated by money, you're excited about reaching out to new people and building relationships, you love to follow up on inbound leads, things that a salesperson's going to read to go, oh, this is me, they're talking about me, not
Mhm.
a list of roles and responsibilities, or the company culture. Yes, that's important, but tell them exactly what the job is going to entail. What are they going to be doing? What are the things that are going to get them excited and energized about the role? And once and that's just trying to attract the right candidate. That'll weed out the wannabes who we're looking at only the the culture and the benefits and how much they're going to get paid. And they're not focusing as much on the what am I actually going to be, measured on and asked to do.
So now you've brought up another question.
Okay.
So I've had a lot of companies come to me and say, we're going to drop our salaries across the board. And they're newer companies and they don't have that big bloated budget where they're like, yeah, we're going to pay a person $100,000, $150,000 base and then commission,
Yeah.
which every salesperson's like, oh yeah, great. $150,000 base plus commission. That'll be awesome. Versus the $30,000 base and you have to work for it. But a lot more companies these days I'm hearing are saying, well, we're going to pay a lower base because we want them to have to work for it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. But so are you hearing more and more companies kind of doing that? Like, well, I need them to work for it. They like, we're going to drop those salaries down because the salespeople really I want to only attract somebody who knows that they're going to have to work for it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta think about what the role entails in terms of the behaviors you want, because you want somebody to elicit those behaviors to go after the right level of selling. I don't hear companies necessarily, lowering their base pay to increase their variable compensation as much as I hear it's gotten more competitive nowadays, and they've actually got to probably raise their base in order to attract the right candidate. But it's finding that right balance between the base pay and what you want them to go and do in order to earn that variable compensation, or that commission or bonus or whatever the case it may be. And there's just so many ways to structure a compensation plan today. I just heard recently how some companies are still trying to do a commission only, and it's like, I'm sorry, but we've moved on from that years ago, and that's just not, and they're doing it because they don't want to pay a salary, because they can't afford the salary.
Right.
You've got 1% of people who will probably jump at that, and that's just not going to work, and it's not going to allow you to attract the right candidates. So,
Right. No, people will come to me. All right. Again, I worked in the staffing industry for many years and commission only. Um, I secretly would giggle at it and be like, who are you trying to attract here?
right,
Because
yeah,
the idea of commission, people now need a living wage, and with everything continuing just increase, people have to, because
yeah,
in most, even in the really quick turnaround sales, it you can't go. There's still the learning curve.
right,
Three to
right,
4 to 6 weeks. There's still a learning curve until you get at least enough to come in, and that's on the quick sales.
yeah, yeah,
Like if you're planning on not paying somebody any type of base whatsoever, then they're not. You're not going to get
right,
a quality person, and you will continue to
right,
just churn and burn.
yeah,
And that just costs that literally costs your company money, despite the fact that you're
yeah,
not maybe not covering a base. You're still spending time training them at the
sure.
expense of whoever's time is training them.
Yes, exactly. And I think on the flip side of that too, you've got people tend to pay too much in commissions. I hear companies, overpaying salespeople for very easy sales. In other words, if the less that your salesperson is engaged in the sales process, the less variable comp or commission they should be getting paid. So take somebody, for example, where you've got an inbound lead and it's a one call close, that shouldn't be a lot of commission on that sale versus the person who's spending 2, 3, 4 sales calls in a complex 5 month sale. Obviously, that's going to be a much bigger, variable compensation. So,
Well, and I've seen companies where they call the cold callers, the biz dev who are scheduling the appointments, aren't even
yeah.
making commission. They're just a salaried employee who just sit and make calls
Oh,
and
yeah.
then
No, I
send it
mean,
to the salesperson. And you're like, wait a second, you aren't, isn't the person making the appointments doing
exactly.
most of the work?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah,
they're
you've got
doing, they're doing the kind of the crappy job.
Yeah. Right, right. Well, you've got to reward your people for the right behaviors, and if the cost of a customer is something that you're trying to navigate, you've got to look at that as a piece of the compensation puzzle of how difficult it is to go find a new customer today. I mean, we all know it's easy to grow existing accounts. And marketing drives a lot of leads for some companies, but those companies that have to go out and find new logos, there's a high cost behind that. And so what that acquisition cost of that customer is, you've got to be able to reward the salespeople for that behavior. And by the way, not all salespeople are motivated by money. A lot of salespeople today are motivated intrinsically. They just want to hear, "Hey, you're doing a great job," or they want to see their name on the top of a leaderboard, or they want to win a trip, or something tangible. It's not always money behind it either, and those are important things to be looking for as you're putting together a comp plan, and even interviewing your salespeople about what motivates them. Because if we're rewarding what motivates them, that just makes the more likely that they're going to stick around with you.
Right. Oh, I loved the trips. The top
Yeah,
producers used to get, a trip to, well, it was different places. But
yeah,
and one year I was pregnant and they even said, "Hey, just because you can't make this year's, company trip, we'll let you do it at a different time." And it was like, "Oh my God,
yeah,
that's so cool." Like,
yeah, exactly.
and I was like big pregnant, like not like, "Oh, I can still go." I was like, ready to pop. It's not safe to travel kind of pregnant. So,
Right, right.
and I loved those trips. I loved like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make it this year." I'm like, and then there was other years where it's like, "Oh, I might not do it." And then like at the last second and then there was years where it's like, "Oh, I've already got that in the bag."
Yeah, right.
So, and again, I still loved my commission. I am definitely a money
Yeah,
driven person, but
sure.
you're completely correct. Not everybody is driven by money. And
Yeah,
you can't not hire somebody if money is not their number one motivator.
right.
Because some companies will be like, "Well, I want money to be your motivator." Well,
Yeah,
what if it's not? What if
exactly.
I'm okay with my $100,000 salary, but my motivator is X?
Yeah,
As long as it's not that I just am okay with making $100,000 and I
yeah,
don't want to go out and sell,
yeah.
because that's a problem too.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes into play too with the coaching that's happening with these salespeople that you're bringing on board too. It's understanding what motivates them, and supporting them and helping them, making sure that there aren't hurdles in their way to accomplishing their goal. It's one thing to hire the right person, but it's the onboarding piece of this too that, like, a lot of companies forget about, and understanding how to set that rep up for success, how to give them the tools and the resources they need, and understand, what that cadence with their manager is going to look like in terms of what expectations need to be set and how they're going to be held accountable, how they're going to be measured. All of that is really important once you get this person on board.
And Brian, that is an entire another conversation when you said
Yeah, it is.
how you're going to coach that person, because we could go
Right.
on for another hour about the amount of companies that hire and then don't coach and just go,
Yes.
"Here's what you're selling. Good luck."
Yeah, yeah. And some people run into issues with hiring, and it's on them because they didn't do the right job, and sometimes the salesperson didn't have, wasn't had the expectations set for them, and they get into a role and go, "Oh gosh, this isn't what I was sold," or "This isn't what I was
Right.
expecting," or "I'm not getting the support that I need from my manager," and they leave. Right. So there's a
Right.
balance there, and that's I think where some companies struggle to figure out. You know, we got a hiring problem. Is it my process? Is it the people I'm hiring, or is it us as a company and a culture and how we coach?
Right.
So there's a lot to that. This
Yeah,
isn't easy
absolutely.
stuff.
No, no, it's not. Now, do you recommend any type of personality assessments, any type of, the big one obviously is, DISC, but
Yeah.
there's so many of them out there now.
Yeah, there's only the one that I use is by a company called the Objective Management Group, and it is a candidate assessment that measures 21 core competencies of sales, and it's only measuring core competencies of sales. In fact, it's the only one in the world that just measures sales competencies. It's not personality or behavioral stuff. It's, can this person sell in your environment. And it measures not only their sales skills, but how well they will perform in a particular company based on that company's role criteria. So it's a pretty cool assessment, but I do recommend that as part of any hiring process because it does help weed out. Think of it as an MRI. A doctor can't see below the surface, so they've got to kind of do an X-ray, right? And a sales talent assessment is just that. It's getting below the surface. It's finding those things that are very difficult for a hiring manager to interview for because we can't see the self-limiting beliefs, or we can't see the level of commitment, motivation, desire that a salesperson has. Those are very hard things to interview for. So yeah, to your point, using a tool like that is going to be really beneficial in the process.
And what is that one called again?
The company is called Objective Management Group, and it is a sales candidate assessment. They've been around 35, 40 years. They've assessed 2.5 million salespeople with 36,000 customers. It's been validated by multiple PhD psychologists. So it's been proven using scientific data to make sure that the candidate you're bringing on matches up against what it is you're trying to hire.
I am wildly interested in that now.
Very, very
Now
cool.
I'm going to be looking into that one. Well,
Yes.
we are coming to time.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish time goes by way too fast.
It goes by quick. Yes. We
It
could talk about
does.
this all day.
I know. I'm such a nerd. But I'm happy that I'm this big of a nerd. But Brian, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I
Yeah.
want to give you your 30-second shameless pitch so you
Oh,
can
thanks.
go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I got into this role because the cost of sales, bad sales hires can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm really focused on those founders, presidents, and even sales managers who are struggling with bad sales hiring situations. And I take them through an objective driven process that helps them identify, interview, and onboard a candidate who will sell at a high performance basis in their unique environment. But beyond that, it's also making sure they've got the right framework in their sales function to make sure that candidate is successful in terms of sales process, metrics, coachability, and trainability as well too. So.
Awesome. And if you want to reach out to Brian, you can find how to do that in the show notes. I will include his website, his email, and his LinkedIn. So you can reach out to Brian there. So
Awesome.
thank you again so much. This has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking about it.
This podcast is presented by Accelerate Growth 45, your one-stop shop for business growth. Stop running your business like an operator, delaying wealth creation, and sacrificing your time. Instead, focus on building a valuable business asset, creating lasting wealth, and reclaiming the time you deserve. Accelerate your growth today and visit us at accelerategrowth45.com.
Thanks for joining us for Love Your Sales. For more, connect with Leighann on LinkedIn and be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear what you think. Looking for a way to take your sales process to the next level? Visit us at loveyoursales.com to find out more about how Leighann can take your organization to new revenue heights. And be sure to join us next time for more great ways to love your customers so they love your sales.